The night I met Jamie was the night everything changed. It was a Thursday in late October, the kind of evening where the air feels electric with possibility. The underground club scene in our city had always been a refuge for people like me, music lovers who found solace in bass lines and sanctuary under strobe lights. I'd been coming to Club Resonance for months, drawn by its reputation for showcasing DJs who treated music as an art form rather than just background noise for people to get drunk to. There was something almost sacred about the space, with its exposed brick walls that seemed to absorb and reflect sound in equal measure, creating an acoustic experience unlike anywhere else in the city. I'm Alex, by the way, 26, perpetually caught between my day job as a sound engineer at a local studio and my night passion as an aspiring DJ. Music has always been more than entertainment for me. It's been the language I speak most fluently, the medium through which I process everything from heartbreak to euphoria. That night, I arrived at Resonance earlier than usual, eager to catch the opening set by a DJ I'd been following online but had never seen live. The anticipation had been building in me all week, a quiet hum beneath my everyday existence that grew louder as Thursday approached. Let me paint the picture of Club Resonance for you. Unlike the glossy, mainstream clubs downtown with their VIP sections and overpriced bottle service, Resonance occupied the basement of what used to be a textile factory. You entered through an unmarked door and descended a narrow staircase where the bass grew stronger with each step, like a heartbeat getting louder as you approached its source. The main room wasn't enormous, but what it lacked in size it made up for in character. A perfect rectangle with the DJ booth elevated at one end, like an altar where music was both created and worshipped. The lighting system was deliberately minimal but effective, mostly deep blues and purples that created shadows rather than illuminated them, with occasional strobes that seemed to freeze moments in time rather than just flash for effect. The sound system, though, was anything but minimal. The owners had invested in custom speakers that delivered crystal-clear highs without sacrificing the kind of bass you feel in your chest cavity. It was the kind of setup that made DJs salivate and dancers lose themselves completely. By the time I arrived that night, the club was already half full, bodies moving in that early evening way, still somewhat self-conscious, not yet surrendered to the night. I made my way to the bar, ordered my usual whiskey soda, and found a spot along the wall where I could observe both the crowd and the DJ booth. The opening act was good, technically proficient, with a solid understanding of how to build energy in a room. But I was waiting for the headliner, a DJ known simply as Jamie, whose mixes I discovered online and become slightly obsessed with over the past few months. There was something different about Jamie's approach to music, an emotional intelligence that came through in every transition, every sample choice. It wasn't just about making people dance. It was about telling a story, creating a journey that the audience traveled together. I'd never seen Jamie perform live, and I found myself growing increasingly anxious as the opening set wound down, wondering if the reality could possibly live up to what I'd built up in my mind. When Jamie finally took over the booth, the energy in the room shifted immediately. The lights dimmed slightly, and there was a moment of near silence, just the faintest ambient hum, before the first track began to build. It wasn't what I expected, slower, more deliberate than the driving beats of the opening act. But within minutes, I understood the strategy. Jamie was creating space, allowing tension to build, making the crowd wait for release in a way that was almost sensual. I couldn't take my eyes off the booth. Jamie moved with confidence, but without showmanship. No dramatic fist pumps or jumping around. Just total immersion in the craft. Tall, with dark hair that fell across one eye, dressed simply in black jeans and a white t-shirt, Jamie had the kind of presence that commanded attention without demanding it. I found myself moving closer to the booth, drawn like a magnet, until I was at the edge of the dance floor, still watching more than dancing. That's when it happened. In the middle of a particularly beautiful transition between tracks, Jamie looked up from the equipment and our eyes met across the room. It was one of those moments that feels significant even as it's happening, a recognition of something, though I couldn't have said what. Jamie held my gaze for several seconds, then smiled slightly before returning attention to the mixer. My heart was suddenly racing faster than the beat, and I felt a flush creep up my neck that had nothing to do with the temperature in the room. For the next hour, I lost myself in the music completely, dancing with an abandon I rarely allowed myself. Every so often, I'd look up to find Jamie watching me, and each time it happened, the electricity between us seemed to intensify. The music shifted into something deeper, more hypnotic, and the crowd responded, moving as one organism now, all inhibitions dissolved by sound and darkness. As the night progressed, I found myself moving closer and closer to the DJ booth, no longer content to admire from a distance. The dance floor was packed by this point, bodies pressed against each other in that intimate way that only happens in clubs, where strangers become momentary partners in something that feels almost spiritual. I was just a few feet from the booth now, close enough to see the concentration on Jamie's face, the slight sheen of sweat on forearms as hands moved confidently between turntables and mixer. The track that was playing began to fade, and Jamie queued up something I recognized immediately, an obscure remix of a song I loved, one I'd mentioned in a comment on one of Jamie's online mixes months ago. It couldn't be a coincidence. As the first notes filled the room, Jamie looked directly at me and mouthed the opening lyrics, a clear acknowledgement that this selection was intentional, personal. I felt a surge of emotion so strong it was almost overwhelming. To be seen like that, to have someone speak to you through music in a way that says, "I noticed you. I remembered you." I moved even closer, now directly in front of the booth, looking up as Jamie continued to work, occasionally meeting my gaze with an intensity that made everything else in the room fade away. The climax of the night came during the final 30 minutes of Jamie's set. The energy had been building steadily. The crowd completely surrendered to the experience. Jamie dropped the volume suddenly, bringing in a track that started with just a simple piano line, vulnerable and exposed against the silence. The crowd held its collective breath, waiting. Then, as the beat kicked back in with twice the force, Jamie leaned over the booth, close enough that I could feel breath against my skin, and mouthed the chorus against my neck. The music kills me every time, but I keep coming back for more. It wasn't just the words, but the way they were delivered, like a confession, a shared secret between us. The sensation of lips not quite touching my skin, forming words meant only for me in a room full of people, sent shivers down my spine. In that moment, it felt like Jamie had seen something in me that I hadn't even fully recognized in myself. A longing for connection that went beyond physical attraction, a desire to be understood through the language we both spoke most fluently, music. When the set finally ended, the crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Jamie acknowledged them with a modest nod before beginning to pack up equipment. I stood there, uncertain what to do next, feeling like something significant had happened, but not knowing how to proceed. As people began to disperse, heading to the bar or outside for air, Jamie stepped down from the booth and walked directly toward me. "You're Alex, right? The one who always has something thoughtful to say about my mixes online." I was stunned that Jamie not only recognized me, but knew my name. "Yeah, that's me. I didn't think you'd remember a random commenter." Jamie smiled, a genuine smile that reached the eyes. "Nothing random about it. You get what I'm trying to do in a way most people don't. Want to grab a drink? I could use one after that set." We found a quiet corner of the bar, as quiet as possible in a club still pulsing with the energy of the night. Jamie ordered whiskey neat. I stuck with my whiskey soda. Up close, I could see details I'd missed from a distance. The slight crease between eyebrows that suggested intensity. The way Jamie's hands, so confident on the equipment, now fidgeted slightly with a napkin. "So, sound engineering by day, DJ aspirations by night?" Jamie asked. "How did you know that?" "Your profile. I may have done some research after your comments kept standing out." The confession made me feel both exposed and thrilled. We talked for hours, long after the club had emptied of all but the most dedicated night owls. Jamie told me about growing up in a household where music was treated as a distraction rather than a calling, about sneaking out to clubs as a teenager, about the first time mixing two tracks together perfectly felt like creating magic. I shared my own journey, how music had been my refuge during a difficult adolescence, how I taught myself to DJ using YouTube tutorials and secondhand equipment, how I dreamed of someday creating the kind of experience for others that Jamie had created tonight. As the staff began cleaning up around us, Jamie looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I don't usually do this, but would you want to continue this somewhere else? I know a 24-hour diner not far from here." Their coffee is terrible, but they don't mind if you sit for hours. The transition from the dark intimacy of the club to the harsh fluorescent lighting of the diner should have been jarring, but somehow it wasn't. Our conversation flowed just as easily under the unforgiving lights, perhaps even more honestly. Jamie told me about past relationships that had failed because partners couldn't understand the all-consuming nature of a DJ's life. The late nights, the travel, the emotional investment in something many people saw as just entertainment. It's like they wanted me to apologize for loving something too much, Jamie said, stirring a third packet of sugar into truly awful coffee. Like passion was something to be suspicious of rather than celebrated. I understood completely. My own romantic history was littered with similar misunderstandings. People who saw my dedication to music as a hobby I should eventually outgrow rather than the core of who I was. We talked about this shared experience, finding comfort in mutual understanding. As dawn began to break outside the diner windows, Jamie wrote a phone number on a napkin and slid it across the table to me. I'm playing at Vertex next Friday. Smaller venue, more experimental set. You should come. Or we could meet before, grab dinner maybe. The question hung in the air between us, transforming what had been an intense connection into something with potential beyond this one night. I took the napkin, my fingers brushing against Jamie's in a touch that felt significant. I'd like that, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded despite the flutter in my chest. Dinner first, then I want to hear what you do in a more intimate space. The week that followed was both excruciating and exhilarating. Jamie and I texted constantly, sending each other tracks we loved, articles about music theory, voice notes reacting to new releases. It was like we'd created our own language, one built on bass lines and melodies rather than conventional flirtation. By the time Friday arrived, I felt like I'd known Jamie for years rather than days. We met at a small Ethiopian restaurant near Vertex, the kind of place where you eat with your hands and sit close together by necessity. Jamie arrived wearing the same simple black jeans, but paired with a deep blue button-down that made those intense eyes even more striking. We ordered a shared platter and Ethiopian honey wine, and picked up our conversation as if no time had passed since the diner. I've been thinking about what you said, Jamie told me, tearing off a piece of injera bread, about how the best DJs are translators, not just selectors. I've never heard it put quite that way before, but it's exactly what I'm trying to do. Translate emotion into sound, create a bridge between what I feel and what the audience experiences. I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the spicy food. That's what I responded to in your music from the beginning. It's not just technically impressive, though it is that too. It's emotionally intelligent. You understand that a great set is about storytelling, about taking people on a journey. Jamie looked at me with an intensity that made me forget we were in a public place. You know how rare it is to meet someone who gets that? Who doesn't just say great set or love the drops, but actually understands what you're trying to communicate. I didn't know, because I'd been searching for that understanding myself. Someone who saw music as I did, as a form of communication as complex and nuanced as any language. The realization that we might have found that in each other was both exhilarating and terrifying. Vertex was indeed more intimate than Resonance, a converted warehouse space with exposed beams and string lights. Capacity, maybe 200 people compared to Resonance's 500. The sound system was state-of-the-art, though, and the crowd was clearly there for the music rather than just a night out. They were the kind of audience that noticed transitions, that appreciated subtlety, that responded to the narrative arc of a set rather than just the big moments. Jamie's set that night was different from what I'd heard at Resonance, more vulnerable somehow, taking more risks. I watched from the side of the booth rather than the dance floor this time, seeing up close the intense concentration, the subtle adjustments, the moment when Jamie would close eyes briefly, lost in the sound before returning to technical precision. During a particularly beautiful segment, Jamie motioned for me to come closer, then handed me a spare set of headphones. Listen to what's coming next, Jamie said directly into my ear, the warmth of breath sending shivers down my spine. Through the headphones, I heard the track that was being queued up, a remix of an obscure song I'd mentioned loving during one of our text conversations that week. The fact that Jamie had not only remembered, but had sought out the track and incorporated it into the set felt like the most intimate gesture possible. When the track finally played for the whole room, Jamie pulled me closer and once again mouthed lyrics against my neck, this time with lips actually brushing skin. This one's for you. Only you. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Jamie and I fell into each other's lives with an intensity that might have been frightening if it hadn't felt so right. We spent hours in Jamie's home studio, me watching the creative process up close, occasionally offering suggestions that were taken seriously. We went to shows together, analyzing other DJs' techniques, discussing what worked and what didn't. We stayed up until dawn talking about everything from the technical aspects of production to our deepest fears and hopes. And yes, we became lovers, our physical connection as intense and communicative as our musical one. Jamie would often play music during our most intimate moments, the carefully selected tracks becoming part of the experience, another layer of connection between us. Sometimes, in the aftermath, Jamie would mouth lyrics against my skin, my neck, my shoulder, the inside of my wrist, turning words into physical sensation in a way that felt almost more intimate than the act itself. But reality has a way of intruding on even the most perfect connections. As our relationship deepened, complications emerged. Jamie was offered a 3-month tour of Europe, an incredible opportunity, but one that would mean significant time apart, just as we were finding our rhythm together. My own career was at a crossroads. A promotion at the studio would mean more stability, but less time for my own DJ aspirations. Then there were the external pressures. My friends, while happy for me, expressed concern about the intensity of our relationship, suggesting that perhaps we were moving too fast. "You barely know each other," my best friend said during a rare night out without Jamie. "I'm worried you're confusing artistic connection with compatibility." Jamie's circle had similar reservations, particularly a longtime friend and collaborator who seemed to view me as a distraction from Jamie's career just as it was taking off. "You've been working toward this break for years," I overheard this friend saying one night. "Don't let yourself get sidetracked now." These external voices began to create internal doubts. Were we mistaking creative chemistry for something deeper? Was our connection sustainable beyond the honeymoon phase? Would one of us eventually have to compromise our dreams for the relationship to work? The tension came to a head the night before Jamie was set to leave for the European tour. We were at Resonance again, coming full circle to where we'd met. Jamie was playing a farewell set, and the energy in the room was electric, everyone aware that they were witnessing something special before a significant absence. I watched from my now usual spot beside the booth, feeling a complex mix of pride and fear. Pride in Jamie's talent, in the deserved recognition that was coming. Fear of what 3 months apart might do to us, of whether what we'd built could withstand the distance and the different trajectories of our lives. Midway through the set, Jamie queued up the track that had been playing during our first real interaction, the one where lyrics had been mouthed against my neck. But instead of the moment of connection I expected, Jamie didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge our shared history with the song. It felt deliberate, a pulling away, and it sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. After the set, as equipment was being packed up, I confronted Jamie about the moment. "You played our song," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But it was like I wasn't even there. Jamie sighed, running a hand through hair that was damp with sweat from the performance. "It's not our song, Alex. It's just a track I like to play." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What are you saying? That what happened between us that first night wasn't significant? That all of this has just been, what? A casual thing for you?" "No, that's not," Jamie began, then stopped, looking around at the club staff who were pretending not to listen. "Can we not do this here? Let's go back to my place and talk." The walk to Jamie's apartment was silent, tense in a way we'd never been with each other before. Once inside, Jamie paced the living room while I sat rigidly on the edge of the couch, waiting. "I'm scared, Alex," Jamie finally said, voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "I'm scared of how much I feel for you, of how quickly this has all happened. I'm scared that you're going to realize while I'm gone that you don't actually need me in your life." The vulnerability in the admission caught me off guard. "Is that why you were distant tonight? You're pushing me away before I can leave you." Jamie sat beside me, close but not touching. "My parents' relationship fell apart because of my father's music career. The touring, the distance, the separate lives they ended up leading. I watched what it did to my mother, how she became this shell of herself, always waiting for him to come home, to choose her over the next gig. I swore I'd never put someone I cared about through that. I took Jamie's hand, feeling the calluses from hours of manipulating equipment. I'm not your mother, and you're not your father. We get to write our own story. But what if the ending is the same? What if this career I've worked so hard for is incompatible with loving someone the way they deserve to be loved? It was a real question, not a rhetorical one, and it deserved a real answer. I thought carefully before speaking. I think love isn't about perfect compatibility or ideal circumstances, I said finally. It's about choosing each other despite the complications, about finding ways to support each other's dreams rather than competing with them. Jamie looked at me with those intense eyes that had captured me from the beginning. And if I asked you to come with me, to put your life on hold, and follow me around Europe for 3 months? That wouldn't be supporting my dreams, I said gently. That would be abandoning them for yours. Just as asking you to turn down this tour would be asking you to sacrifice for me. Neither of those is the answer. Then what is? How do we do this, Alex? I squeezed Jamie's hand. We trust what we've built. We use the technology we have to stay connected. We give each other space to grow individually while still growing together. And we recognize that if what we have is real, and I believe it is, it can withstand 3 months of physical distance. Jamie was quiet for a long moment, then leaned forward to rest forehead against mine. I've never wanted to try before. With anyone else, it was easier to just let go, to accept that my life and love were incompatible. But with you, with me, with you, I want to find a way. Even if it's hard. Even if we have to figure it out as we go. The next morning, I drove Jamie to the airport. As we stood at the security checkpoint, that liminal space of temporary goodbyes, Jamie pulled me close and, in what had become our most intimate gesture, mouthed words against my neck. Not lyrics this time, but a promise. I'll come back to you, whatever it takes. The 3 months that followed were challenging but illuminating. We video called almost daily, sharing the details of our separate lives. Jamie's experiences in different European cities, the new producers and DJs encountered along the way, the growth that comes from being immersed in different scenes. I shared my own developments, a promotion at the studio that came with more creative input, my first real DJ gig at a small local venue, the ways I was building my own path in Jamie's absence. We had arguments, of course, misunderstandings that festered in the space between calls, jealousies that flared when social media showed one of us having fun without the other, moments of doubt when the distance felt insurmountable. But we worked through them, learning to communicate more clearly, to trust more deeply, to give each other the benefit of the doubt. And we found creative ways to maintain our connection. Jamie would send me snippets of works in progress, asking for my input. I would record ambient sounds from my day, raindrops on windows, street musicians, the particular hum of the studio, and send them for Jamie to incorporate into sets. We created playlists for each other, musical conversations that continued even when we couldn't speak directly. When Jamie finally returned, we met at Resonance again. Our beginning, our full circle. Jamie was playing a homecoming set, and the club was packed with people who'd followed the European tour online and were eager to hear how the experience had influenced the sound. I watched from my usual spot, seeing the subtle differences in Jamie's performance style. New techniques picked up from European DJs, a broader range of influences, a confidence that came from successful shows in some of the world's most demanding venues. But I also saw the familiar elements that had drawn me in from the beginning. The emotional intelligence in track selection, the storytelling approach to building a set, the moments of vulnerability amid the technical prowess. Halfway through the night, Jamie did something unprecedented. Handed control of the booth over to the opening DJ for a 15-minute break, something I'd never seen happen during a headlining set. The crowd murmured in confusion as Jamie stepped down and walked directly toward me. "What are you doing?" I asked as Jamie reached me. "You never take breaks during sets. Some things are more important than uninterrupted performances," Jamie said, taking my hand and leading me through the crowd toward a door marked staff only that led to a small outdoor area where club employees took their breaks. The night air was cool after the heat of the club, the relative quiet almost shocking after hours of bass. Jamie led me to a bench in the corner of the space, sitting close beside me. "These 3 months showed me something important," Jamie said, still holding my hand. "I always thought I had to choose between my career and a relationship, between my passion for music and my capacity to love someone. Being away from you but still feeling connected, still growing together even from a distance, made me realize that's a false choice. I felt a tightness in my chest, a good kind of tension. What are you saying? Jamie reached into a pocket and pulled out a small object, a USB drive on a silver chain. This contains every track that makes me think of you, every song that reminds me of a moment we've shared, every piece of music that helps me explain what you mean to me when words fail. Jamie placed the necklace around my neck, the drive resting against my chest like a pendant. I'm saying I love you, Alex. I'm saying I want to build a life with you that has room for both of our dreams. I'm saying I don't want to choose between music and love because, with you, they're the same thing. I touched the USB drive, feeling its weight against my skin. I love you too. And I want the same thing. A life where our passions complement each other rather than compete. Jamie smiled, that genuine smile that still made my heart race, then leaned forward to mouth words against my neck one more time. But unlike all the previous instances, this time Jamie spoke the words aloud as well, letting me hear them and feel them simultaneously. You are the best track I've ever discovered. The one I'll never get tired of playing. The one that changes every time I listen, but somehow always stays exactly what I need. We returned to the booth together, Jamie resuming the set with renewed energy while I watched from my spot, the USB drive a tangible reminder of our connection. As the night progressed, I realized that what we had built was something rare, a relationship where music wasn't just a shared interest but a shared language, where our individual passions strengthened rather than threatened our bond, where we could be both independent artists and devoted partners. The final track of the night was one I'd never heard before. As it played, Jamie motioned me closer to the booth and whispered in my ear, I made this during the tour. It's called Alex's Neck because that's where this all began, with lyrics mouthed against skin, with words felt rather than heard. The track built slowly, layers of sound creating something both haunting and hopeful. I closed my eyes, letting it wash over me, hearing our story in every note. The initial attraction, the deepening connection, the challenges overcome, the future still unfolding before us. When I opened my eyes, Jamie was watching me with that intense gaze that had captured me from the beginning. As the track reached its emotional peak, Jamie leaned over the booth one more time, lips brushing my ear. The DJ killed the music, mouthed the lyrics against my neck. And in that moment, I knew I'd found the melody I'd been searching for my entire life. In that crowded club, surrounded by strangers moving to our shared creation, I felt a certainty I'd never experienced before. Whatever challenges came next, touring schedules, career decisions, the everyday complications of two creative lives intertwining, we would face them together, translating our emotions into sound, our connection into music that would sustain us through whatever dissonance life might bring. Because in the end, that's what both love and music are about, finding harmony in complexity, beauty in imperfection, and meaning in the spaces between notes. Jamie and I had found our rhythm together, and though the tempo might change, the underlying beat would remain constant. The soundtrack of two lives that had found their perfect collaborative mix. Total _char_count, 18,822.